Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having me to give you a little bit of a congressional update. A lot of things going on in our country, a lot of things going on in the world, certainly a lot of things happening locally. This is not a partisan political speech. I don't even want to go there at all. So if it sounds like it is, it's not intentional. But I don't think it will be. But I just want to say that there's so many things happening. You know, we're in a struggling economy. There's a lot of issues in our society as it relates to drug overdoses, fentanyl, and all of the things that go along with that. Worldwide, we have lots of challenges, certainly. Steve mentioned the committee I'm on that has to do with communist China. So we're, tensions in that region of the world. Look at Israel, Ukraine, lots of things happening in those respects. Locally, frankly, a lot of people are struggling economically. Look at the rate of inflation and the cost of everything. As you know, I'm a farmer. I tell you, it's tough when you're in business these days and all of your input costs are high and what you're receiving for what you produce has not kept up. But I just want to focus on a couple of different things. And then I think, Lori, there's time for if people have thoughts they'd like to express or questions that they'd like to pose, happy to open the floor to that. First of all, you probably will get tired of me saying this, and that's a good thing. You're not getting through unless people are starting to react to what you say. I am a strong proponent of the lower Snake River dams, and I think this is one of the biggest issues that face our region. I think that hydropower is a key part of our energy portfolio and should remain so. And so many other benefits that we receive from them, as transportation, irrigation, flood control, you could even say recreation. We should be encouraging, I think. There's so much opportunity in locations around the country where we could be encouraging hydropower as an energy source, something that we need more of, more energy. But I got to say, and this is probably where it may sound partisan, and it's not, but a lot of people are working very hard to breach our dams. And this administration in particular has put together a task force with that stated goal, or understood goal. Even though they may say that that is not what we're working towards, every action that we see taken seems to be in that direction. And my question is, why as this task force was being put together, more local stakeholders involved and engaged and invited to the table? Instead, we have a lot of federal officials who really have no connection to the Pacific Northwest. And so I don't think it's a balanced conversation that's happening. And that's a disappointment to me as being someone who is working very hard to make sure that the dams in the salmon can continue to thrive and coexist. And I think for our future, for energy production, which, like I said, we need more of, not less. I don't know if you know this, I'm sure many of you do, that we're slated as a state to grow by 1 million people over the next decade. So we need wind and solar and nuclear and all those other options as well, but we absolutely have to have hydropower in the mix. I think it's one of the cleanest renewable sources of energy that you can have. So to that end, what can we do? This is an ongoing thing that I think ever since the dams have been constructed has been debated. We need to do a lot of things. What I'm doing in Congress is through legislation, doing all I can to make sure that it's Congress that makes this decision and that the replacement for the energy that's produced by these dams does not make more environmental damage than what the dams have. And so I think there's a balance there that we can look toward. I also think every single person in this room in our community has a role to play as well. I think you all know, or have family or friends on the other side of the mountains. We all have a role in making sure that people understand how important these 4 pieces of infrastructure are to our economy. And I think that a lot of that communication has to happen as well. So we can intentionally work towards saving salmon and making the dams as efficient and fish-friendly as possible. And we've been proving that. We can do that. Also, recently it's been, this is way before I was paying that close attention, I guess, but about over 30 years ago, the Army Corps conducted a test drawdown. Does anybody remember that? Gene does. It happened back in about 1992. For over a month, the river system was lowered by something over 20 feet just to see the impact. And you can imagine some of the things that happened. Not only were thousands and thousands of fish isolated from their ability to move through the river system and eventually died, but much of our infrastructure that we depend on for our transportation system, the way that we can move products up and down the river, was unable to function. So all of those impacts that were stark as it relates to our economy were made apparent. And so we know what will happen if we lower the river levels. We know how much impact that will have to our communities and to our economy. So it's clear to me that not only would salmon be negatively harmed, severely harmed, but also our economy would be. And I, for one, am truly engaged in making sure that that does not happen, and that we continue to do all we can to do the hard work, and it won't be easy, it will be expensive work, to make sure that we do all we can for the salmon, but that we protect our ability to generate power and to power our economy with the hydroelectric system that we have in place. So expect more from that. We have not won that battle yet. It will rage on, and I would like every single one of you to be engaged in that, because we all have to understand the importance to our economy and our communities. So, as far as the economy is concerned, I don't have to tell any one of you that prices have been going up over the last few years. The cost of living, the cost of doing business, prices everywhere have skyrocketed. I went to the grocery store just last week. Oh my gosh. And just because I'm Dutch, that's not the only reason, but prices are just crazy. You can't buy anything that's less than 15 bucks, it doesn't seem like. You walk out of the store with a couple small grocery bags and you're well over 100 bucks. And it's having a real impact on working families, people throughout our communities around the country. And at the same time, prices have been going up, real wages have been going down. So there's work to do there, absolutely, so that we can make sure that younger generations can enjoy the same standard of living that we've been able to, and be able to buy a house and all of those things. So what are some of the things we can do? There's a couple things that stand out, and there's a lot. But some of our energy policies, I think you could point to as being drivers of inflation, putting pressure on prices. Everything moves with energy, right? The cost of fuel drives the cost of everything you purchase. Nothing arrives to those shore shelves without energy. The trucks that it takes to get it there, the fuel that it takes to produce things. You know, I know on my farm, everything that we do takes energy. So that's one thing. And another thing that, might be you'd surprise coming from a member of Congress and the federal government, but I think federal spending has a lot to do with the drivers of inflation, putting pressure on those things and driving that cost up. So we've got to be much more mindful of that. what actions we take in Washington, D.C. has on the impact of the entire country's economy. So we've been trying to respond as much as possible. As Steve said, I'm on the Appropriations Committee, and we have been working very hard to curb our spending. You know, we as a country, we are on a very, gosh, it's almost like crack, I guess you could say, for members of Congress. They love to spend money. But we have a lot of needs in this country too, so you've got to balance those needs with your ability to pay. And those are hard decisions. We could go into a lot of detail about this, but a lot of the spending that goes on in our nation's capital is not things that we make decisions on, but it's the mandatory spending things that just happen whether we say yes or no. It's this discretionary spending that we have control over, but that's less than 20% of the spending. In fact, it's more like 15% of the spending. Those things that just happen automatically, that's what we've got to tackle, and that's what politicians around the country have to be more honest with their constituents about, that we have to tackle some of those really, really tough issues. And it's not going to be easy. Politically, it's almost suicidal, but it has to be done because we cannot continue to spend so much more than we're taking in. It's going to be a balance of things, absolutely. But we have to preserve those things that are important and do the best we can to economize in making them available. And what am I talking about? I'm talking about Social Security, Medicare, which are important programs that people pay into and depend on, and that we have to preserve to make sure they're there into the future. But things have got to be changed in order to make that happen. And that's where a lot of the spending comes from. Then there's other things too. Right now, I think we're spending more on our national interest than we do on our national defense, because interest rates have gone up and we continue to spend more than we should. It's a, you know, and you know, some of these things have been bipartisan, absolutely. So this is where I guess I can be fair to both sides. Republicans and Democrats have been guilty of spending more than we should. Partly, it was a response to the pandemic that we just went through. And I, you know, as much as I hate to spend more than we have, we couldn't let our economy go down the toilet either. So there was a balance there as well. But that means that we have to be even more prudent as we move forward in the actions that we take. One of the things that I wanted to touch on and maybe clear up some misconceptions about, and that's the old term, and we don't use this, so nobody ever uses when you leave this room. You remember earmarks and the bridge to nowhere and all that kind of stuff. Well, we've brought something back to Congress in the last couple of years, but it's called community funding, which is not an additional funding to what would already be budgeted, what would already be spent, but it's directed by members of Congress instead of allowing, I guess you could call them faceless bureaucrats, that always sounds good, people that have no familiarity with Eastern Washington or Central Washington were making decisions about where money is to be spent. We changed that, so now members of Congress can have more influence on that. And I'm proud to say that I think that system has worked well, and I think that it actually was a smart thing for Congress to do because it brought back some of the constitutional authority that we had relinquished to the executive branch. So that I think we have more responsible spending because of that, and community needs are being met more directly. For instance, in the last year, the Pasco wastewater treatment was partly a recipient of community project funding, as was the Quincy rail expansion. And this coming year, I'm working on getting some other things into community project funding that shall have a huge impact on people in my district. The Adams County Correctional Facility is one thing, as well as the Moses Lake Water Infrastructure Project. And then the Toppenish Astria Hospital and their emergency department. Those are the kinds of things that we can target directly. Like I said, not additional funding. This would have been dollars spent already, but directed funding by members of Congress. And then one other issue I wanted to bring up, because this is something that I've been very engaged with for the last several years. And I think we're making some progress, but I got to tell you, it's a tough one. And that's the whole topic of fentanyl and drug overdoses. The lady with the Alzheimer's organization asked if anybody had a relationship with anybody that had Alzheimer's, and a lot of people probably could say yes to that. I bet you a lot of people could say yes if you were asked if you knew anybody or this fentanyl overdose issue has impacted you or your family. It's touching people throughout our communities. And it's not just the homeless people on the streets. It's every walk of life. People are being impacted by this deadly, dangerous drug. Something that just if you took a couple grains of salt, that's off your table, that's the equivalent of that in fentanyl could be lethal. And young people, or just, not even just young people, are ingesting this stuff unknowingly sometimes, buying something that they probably shouldn't to begin with, not knowing that it's been laced with fentanyl. It's truly one of those things that is I think, a huge detriment to our communities. I started something a year and almost a half ago called the Central Washington Fentanyl Task Force. Put together almost 36 people of different areas and walks of life that have something to do with this issue, whether it's the judicial side or law enforcement or the medical community. We even have families members of families who have been impacted directly by losing members of their family to this drug. We even have a person in recovery, an addict who is in recovery, which I think is a tremendously important perspective to have. Looking at things at what can we do to address this. As far as I know, it's the only task force of its kind in the country. But I can tell you that the things that we're coming up with, that we're hoping to come up with, will be looked at by people throughout the United States, because everyone is being impacted by this. You've probably heard the numbers, and I hate to spout off a bunch of numbers, but over 100,000 people a year die from drug overdoses. And about 70% of that is because of this one drug, fentanyl. So it's something that, in fact, I'm on that task force, or excuse me, on the select committee on China. One of the things that we discovered, China manufactures, produces 97% of the fentanyl and the fentanyl precursors in the world. And they incentivize drug companies in China to export fentanyl. And guess where a lot of it comes? Right here. Right here to the streets of Richland and Kennewick and Pasco and Yakima and Moses Lake and Okanagan, Omak. It's one of those things that we've got to do something about. So while working on the demand side, right, which I got to say, I'm very proud of the effort that's going on right here in the Tri-Cities. The recovery center at the old Kennewick Hospital, my hat's off to that group of people that have been working so hard on making that become a reality. That is going to make a difference. Help people who are in need, because right now we have no place to take them, no help to give them, or very little, not enough. And that also, I think, will be something that other communities in our state will look to and say, oh, we could do that. And I'm very hopeful about that. But this is one of those things that no easy answers to. It's not one of those like how long ago was that? 30, 40 years ago. Just say no. I mean, it's way beyond that. This is a scourge that we have to do something about. And I don't want to sound paranoid about this, but you know the relationship we have with China. We're working on trying to make sure that we compete fairly with China. Some people tell me that this is China's effort to undermine their adversary, the United States. I'm not sure that's the case. I can't tell you that I have facts to back that up, but I do know that we have to do everything we possibly can to stop this drug coming into our country, because it is undermining the United States, whether it's intentional or not. They have found a weakness in our country. So, lots of things that I could talk about. There's so many things going on. A lot of good things, some not so good that we need to work on. But just let me tell you that I've been your representative now almost 10 years. And it truly is an honor and a privilege. And I know you hear probably every politician in the room will have said something like that to their constituents, but it's the honest to God truth. I know it's a tremendous responsibility that I carry on my shoulders when I go back to Washington, D.C. to do the best I can to represent the views of a very diverse district. And we have one of the largest districts in the country. As you know, it stretches from Canada to Oregon, essentially the middle third of the entire state, and a lot of different perspectives and opinions. So it's not an easy job to represent all of that, but it's one that I enjoy tremendously, and I take to heart every single day how I can do as good a job as I possibly can. I do have a tremendous team behind me. So if any of you have any issues that I can be of service to you with, please let me know, whether it's the VA, if you're a veteran having difficulty, whether it's Social Security or any of the labyrinth of federal agencies that we all have to deal with from one time to another. We take hundreds of thousands of calls on an annual basis, emails, contacts. Can't always get the answer everybody wants, but we do the best we can to make sure that satisfaction is what you get. But please tell your friends and neighbors if they have an issue, to let me know, and we'll be more than happy to help them. So, like I said, lots of things to cover, and I'd love to discuss more with you, but I think at this point, Lori, I'm just going to open up the floor. If there's any, I don't know if you have a microphone, or if you need one of those, but you can just yell out if you need to. And if you have any questions or thoughts or feedback or anything else you'd like to hear about, I'd be happy to try to answer those questions. And so with that, thank you very much for having me today, and I hope the lunch was good. I hope to have a bite of it when I get done. So thank you. Oh, this is perfect. No hands being raised.
Congressman, an opportunity to just say thank you real quick. For months, you've heard the TRIDEC and Energy Forward Alliance team talk about the Clean Up to Clean Energy initiative out at DOE at the site. And we just wanted to say thank you to you and to both senators for your advocacy and communicating that community-led vision for an opportunity to both have solar out on a portion, but also to preserve that key corridor. So just thank you for your advocacy there.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, like I said, and thanks, Sean, for that wasn't a plant, by the way. But we are in a unique place in the country. We can boast almost an all of the above energy portfolio in Washington State, and we need to work hard to preserve that. Because, like I said, the demand for energy is going nothing but up. Our growing population, the growing technology, just AI alone. Does anybody know the figures behind that and how much that's going to consume moving forward? And if we're moving towards an electric lifestyle, all of that, when you plug something in and when you turn on a switch, you expect something to happen. And it's not magical. It has to. There's a lot of work behind it to make sure that that's the case. So. Thank you for that comment, and I think we need to utilize every resource that we have available to us. Yes, sir.
My name is Casey McWallahy with the Yakama Nation Tribal Council. Congressman Newhouse, behalf of the Yakima Nation, we just want to say thank you once again for your support. Yakima Nation being awarded $4.6 million for the Village of Hope and the housing expansion. With the Village of Hope, with the Yakima Nation, that's going to help out a lot of our community, our homeless community, with transition, also with becoming, clean and sober. There's a lot of things that that program is going to be utilizing those funds for. So we just want to say thank you for your support in getting those funds, and also, just request that you help us follow it through to the end, so that way the funds are not, we get the full funding that was awarded. And then also, just behalf of the Yakima Nation, we want to say thank you for your support in, with Bateman Island and the funding that we received, that the Corps of Engineers are going to be receiving to help us with that. And, just once again, say thank you on behalf of Yakima Nation.
Thank you, sir. Let me say, too, to you, we have tremendous partners in our tribal communities. The Colville, the Yakima are the two tribes that we have in the 4th District, and they truly do work very well at moving issues forward. And I want to thank you for helping me on my efforts to solve the issue of the missing and murdered Indigenous women, and that's such an important issue, improving the law enforcement opportunities on tribal nations' properties. Those are the things that have impacts certainly in Central Washington, but all over the country. And so thank you for standing up and being strong for those issues as well. And for being partners in solving the problems on the Yakima River as well as the Columbia River system. So thanks to you. Good. Well, I know when that's time to, oh, there's one more.
Just briefly, you did talk about the dams. When I have spoken with cooperative power leaders and Northwest Public Power leaders, they've echoed what you said, that they don't feel like they have access to the room for where the decisions are being made, and they don't understand why. And those leaders are across the political spectrum, and they generally are saying a similar thing, which is we should keep our dams and keep our renewable energy from hydropower. So how is that going to be fixed for them to get access to the decision-making process?
Well, that's a really good point. It's kind of one-sided, in my humble opinion, at this point. And so the administration we have to demand that we be a part of that conversation. And no decisions will be accepted without that balanced work. There's just too much at stake here. So, like I said, I'm working through legislation. Those are things that I can do, concrete things in Congress. And I'm willing and able and more than happy to be as strong a voice as possible towards that, having that balanced conversation. But like I said, I didn't mean this as just a passing remark. Everybody in this room can be a part of the effort here, and has to be, because there's just, the reasons are so many. It's such an important issue for us and for our future. So there's opportunities, no matter what political persuasion you happen to be, or even what side of the issue you are on. This has to be a balanced approach to solving these issues that we have in front of us. I don't think anybody in this room would say that we don't want salmon. We absolutely do. But we also want the benefits of the hydroelectric system, those things that have allowed us to get as far as we have economically in our Pacific Northwest. So I think we can prevail with that kind of argument, and determine, so far we have, and I am determined that we will. Thank you. So with that, is there another? Jamie, did you have a question? No. Oh, okay. Okay. So, well, thank you very much. Thank you all. The Tri-City Chamber is an awesome organization, and thank you for helping to make this place something that we can all be very proud to say that this is our home. So thank you for doing that.